Hi there. Welcome to Season 3 of But Seriously, the Cancer Podcast. My name is Bert Scholl. I'm a two-time cancer survivor, a cancer survivorship coach, and I'm the creator and host of But Seriously, the Cancer Podcast. To learn more about my coaching services, please go to bertscholl.com. That's BERTSCHOLL.com. We'd also really love your feedback, which you can provide by going to the bertscholl.com contact page and filling out the form. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at But Seriously the Cancer Podcast and on Twitter at But Seriously TCP. And make sure you check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/But Seriously the Cancer Podcast. And thank you so much for all you do. Today's guest is Christine Baze. Christine is a musician, pianist, and singer-songwriter, a licensed marriage and family therapist, the founder and executive director of the Yellow Umbrella Organization, an HPV awareness organization. She's one of 5 women featured in the documentary Someone You Love, the HPV Epidemic. She's a mac and cheese connoisseur and the mother of the cutest papillon ever, Harold, the Prince of Pickering Wharf. I loved speaking with Christine and felt like we were 2 peas in a pod, which is likely why she and I just dove right into some pretty vulnerable topics. We ended up speaking for like 3 hours, so I split this episode into 2 parts, which ended up working quite well, because in the first part we speak about her first diagnosis, and in the second part we speak about her second. Christine has been cancer-free for 2 years. During this episode of the show, I talk about a childhood sexual assault from my past. For some people with a history of sexual trauma, this can be triggering or reactivating. If this applies to you, please be sure you have the support you need before continuing on with the episode. So, I'm really curious about, you say you had a second diagnosis. You had a recurrence.
Not a recurrence, so a brand new cancer. Yep. On October 1st of 2018, I was diagnosed with invasive lobular carcinoma, breast cancer, stage 2B.
And how was it discovered?
Well, so the tumor, it was pretty large for a breast tumor and for not feeling it ever. It was about 3 centimeters, so about the size of a thumbnail, and in my left breast. And so, funny story is I slept with my ex-boyfriend. So I had a boyfriend a few years ago, and we lived together for a little bit, and it didn't work out. And we had been broken up for about a year, and we slept together, and he didn't tell me that night. He actually came over a couple days later and was like, Baze, do you remember anything? And I'm like, no, because he said something about feeling something, but I was like, just being frisky and like, yeah, you feeling my love, you feeling my tit, whatever.
Right.
But he's like, Baze, I felt something, and let's do this, and his first wife actually had passed away from cancer. And so then he showed me where it was, and then I felt it, and we just held each other and sobbed and cried the rest of the night. And then the next morning, I hit up my doctor, my primary care, and went in. He saw me right away, and he was like, yes, I feel something. And, thank gosh for being in the area that I am in the Boston area. There's excellent medical care, and the Mass General system, it saved my life a number of times, and I worked for them. And so either way, I was able to get the mammo very quickly. And then they decided to go ahead and do the ultrasound and needle biopsy. And I don't know, it's like the cervical came out of the blue, it's just like I was just going in for my regular pap. It was just like, but going in, I have a symptom. I didn't have any symptoms with cervical. I was just going for my, this was like there's something in my breast. And then knowing what I know, and I've done so much, advocacy work with doctors, et cetera, and I'm a therapist, so I'm pretty good at reading faces and people and et cetera. And I knew. I I knew. And
Mm-hmm.
so when the needle biopsy, came back, and they were like, yep. So invasive, the lobular, so it's milk duct. And we did, all the genetic testing and all of that stuff. There's no breast cancer in my family, and cervical is not related to breast in any way. So just got bingo
Okay.
twice. So I'm lucky in that I'm HER2 negative, but I am estrogen and progesterone positive. And there's another, I'm like, gosh, I didn't learn my stuff as much with the breast. I didn't realize that there's like 17 different breast cancers. And like I said, I'm not nearly as well versed in it, but there is another risk factor that I'm not like the number one, but I'm like the next one in terms of risk. So the positive thing about the estrogen positive is, so they put me on hormone therapy. So, and I do find it ironic that or not so ironic, notable that I was diagnosed on October 1st, and October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Right in time. Haha. But they have me on, hormone therapy. And so I did that for 6-7 months, ended up being before they went in for the surgery. And because of the risk factor and the genetic stuff, whatever, like they really kind of put it up to me, and that there is a decent chance that I will be diagnosed again. And so they were like, do you want to take, both and have a double? And this is like going to sound very superficial of me, but I like my tits, and I'm a single woman. I do not have a boyfriend. I do enjoy being with people, and I enjoy the feeling. So everyone's like, Baze, you could get some sick knockers. And I'm like, I won't feel the sensation that, and so I think that most women in my position with this diagnosis, if they had a husband, if they had children, and I think if I had a husband or children, that I may have chosen differently. But for where I am in my life right now, I took it all in, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna go with it, and I'm gonna take some chances. I'm still gonna be, accept most things, but no, I'm gonna choose to keep my breasts, and I'm gonna have a lumpectomy. And so they went in and they did the lumpectomy, and they didn't get it all. The margins were not clean, so they had to go in again 3 weeks later, a month later, and then they got it all. And then I had 20 rounds of radiation, but no chemo. So when they did the surgery, they also took out my sentinel node under my armpit there, because that was to see, whether it had gone further. And so I was really terrified of the potential of having chemotherapy, because I know how sick it made me last time. And yet it's 20 years later, 19 years later. I was 49 when I was diagnosed. So I was 31 at the first one, 49 with the second. So 2 times before 50. Woo. But, it's come a long way, and they're able to really take care of the physical stuff so much better than they used to.
Yeah.
So they reassured me of that. And so then the other thing, again, sounds superficial, but with the chemo that I had before, cisplatin was what I had with my pelvic radiation daily. So every week I would go in and have the cisplatin. I didn't lose the hair on my head. So it wasn't that kind of chemo. And I thought all chemos made it, but it turns out that's not the case. So they got very thin and dried. I lost all the hair down in my pubic area, of course, which, hey, I didn't mind because of the radiation.
From the radiation, yeah.
With this, with breast cancer chemos, that would be part of the deal. And I didn't want to lose my red curls, and it's like, so ridiculous. And if at the end of the day, if they said that I had to, of course I would
Yeah.
have. But in thinking about the possibility, the potential, it's like I I was really grateful that I was not necessary for me to have chemo. So, like, at the end of the day, with these two separate cancer experiences, it's so interesting. And I'm still digesting, like, because it's still fairly fresh for me. So this was last summer that I was in treatments. I had my radiation like the month of July.
Of
So,
2019.
yeah.
Because you
'Cause
had
I had the hormone
you,
therapy, so the
yeah.
letrozole is what I'm on, and I'm still on, and I will continue to be on that for between 5 and 10 years. And luckily, I tolerate it very well. I have no problem with it. But so I did that starting right after my diagnosis. I think I started that in, November, and then my surgery was scheduled for May 9th. Was my first surgery of 2019 for the boob, and then when they didn't get it all, they went back in on the 30th of May. So, and then they got it all, and then I took June to recover from the surgery, and then I had treatments for like the month of July.
Just something popped into my head, a little side note. So you mentioned earlier our friend Rachel.
Yes, Rachel Hogenkamp.
She's been a guest on the podcast. It just had me think like, wow, so you were available to her when she had her diagnosis, and then she was available to you when you had your second diagnosis.
When she was diagnosed, so when we were talking earlier about the caretaker and the people that you love, that you're close to.
Yeah.
Rachel would be the person that is closest to me in my heart, and, that has had cancer. And knowing completely who she is, when she told me, I think I was like more angry at the world or the universe or the whatever fucker would do this to someone like her. And we think, it's like, oh, well, that one smoked, so she deserves lung cancer. That one, did that. And it's like, none of that is true anyway. And like, when you know that, she just operates from a place of wholeness and goodness in everything that she does, and her body's still acted up. Her body's still got cancer. And we joked because I was like, I fucking did this. I was supposed to be the only one to get cancer. What are you, trying to rain on my parade, trying to steal a little of my thunder? Come on, girl, But what was so phenomenal, like as Rachel was going through it, that she could talk to me about the radiation burns, and she could talk to me about the cording in her arm, and she could talk to me, about like her, what she was feeling or not feeling. And she knew I got it because I understood.
Yeah.
And then when I had to call her to say, like, guess what? Now I'm jumping on your bandwagon. Then she literally, because she knew, because I hadn't had breasts before. So when I had my burns and stuff, then she was like, remember, Baze, I had those burns. Actually, I have some pictures, really, and talking about the stretches or the specific things. And then also about, the impact on relationships and how people treat you, and whether, it's like, oh, you're out of treatment now, you're all better. And it's like, oh, it's just you're just supposed to be normal again. And Rachel and I were able to really talk about how it doesn't quite happen like that.
No, it does not.
And I think that is for people who haven't had cancer, I think that is one of the boats that they miss, and again, not to their fault, it's like, I don't want them to understand from this way, but that just because you finished your last treatment and you got to ring that bell, which is a wonderful feeling, but your body and your mind and everything has so much healing to do. It's almost like grief. It's like when someone passes and you go to the wake and the funeral. There's a lot of love and a lot of people are there, but a week out, it's like very few people will continue to come back and recognize that pain and loss is only just begun, because in some ways that's when it really sinks in. And I think that the after treatment aftermath is something that I've really relied on people like Rachel and a few other friends that have had cancer to really understand and go like it's unfortunately it can be a slippery slope to slip back into a dark place or a worried place. And as you were acting out, the what if in your head, like what you're going to say to your son, like with the breast cancer, I was like, holy shit, after all this is how it's going to go? Really?
Right.
I was like, you got to be fucking kidding me. And then I'm like, yeah, you know what? Cancer ain't got nothing on me. And I just switched it around and I was like, okay, baby, bring it. I dare you. Yeah, nah, I got you. No problem. And that's how I went into every treatment. Like once I got over the diagnosis and everything and was well into the hormone therapies, I approached my surgery. A couple of things I feel like I did very well this time around. Because the first time around, I definitely blocked out people as I fell deep into my depression. Distance, because I didn't want to see the pain in their eyes, so to feel their hurt as they looked at me. Because again, that knowing that I was causing them pain, so I'd rather just push them away and deal with it myself. This time, I did not do that, and the last time I was married, and so that having a partner to go to and from appointments, like the thought of doing that alone, terrified me. And so I'm very blessed that here in Salem, Massachusetts, where I've now lived for 13 years since my husband and I split up, I have this fantastic community of just like amazing creative. The only other place I would live other than Salem is Ithaca. Ithaca and Salem are very similar creatures. I think Salem's a little more wild and witchy, but the creative energy, spirits, it's very similar. And so every single appointment that I had, like I put it out there. I was like, I want someone to go with me. And like for all 20 radiation appointments, I had like 18 different people. A couple of people did it a couple of times, but I would come and my radiation techs are like, who you got here today, Baze? And I'm like, oh yeah, we got Steve Stone here. We got Heather. We've got, it was really important to be able to feel like I wasn't alone, because I think that of the ongoing things, being a single person, unable to bear children with a cancer history and a few other medical, like I said, scares that have happened. And now breast cancer, it's like, well, I'm a barrel of fun. Who's going to want to step into this with me? Here, come on. Let's chill, man. I'm entertaining for days, as long as I'm here. And
not feeling like a safe bet.
No, not feeling like a prize for anyone, but my friends and my family have definitely made me feel like a national treasure despite that, you know what I mean? And so that is, I am very grateful for. But it's interesting psychologically, like for myself, in that period between diagnosis and surgery. So I only told, like a few people. I didn't blast it on social media. I didn't want to do anything until it came up for the surgery. And then I wanted the collective energies and thoughts and prayers from others, but in the beginning it was like my illness, my disease, for me only. And I tend to I, as much as I'm a therapist and I'm a fan of looking behind the curtain in the closet, under the rug, sometimes it's hard to do for yourself what, you can encourage and see in others and appreciate. Um, but I did not treat myself well during that time. And I really, it's like you'd think I would know better. I started off okay. I was like, all right, got to get my tools in order. And I got back on an antidepressant, and I went back to my therapist and, you know, started that process. And then I don't know, I'm not actually sure what happened, Bert, but it was almost like living in denial
Mm-hmm.
for 6 months. Like it messed with my head, like having cancer and having this tumor in my body. And I was just living with it. I'm like, cut the fucker out. I'm like, can't. And they were like, no, we have to shrink it first. We have to shrink it. That's what we're doing. Unless you want a mastectomy, then we'll do it today. But you know what I mean? But I was the one that said, no, I want to try to keep it. So it was my own doing, but that's still, I turned to, the traditional icky coping mechanisms that, people do. And I have an affinity for Jameson. And so I can drink and pretend like stuff isn't there for a few hours anyway, and I did that way too much, and I believe in cannabis and marijuana, and that is one of the things that medicinally my doctors have given me marijuana, dronabinol in a pill form for my radiation arthritis for 20 years. And here in Massachusetts, it's legal. And so I do utilize the medicine in that way. But I can recognize when I wasn't using it just for medicine. You know what I mean? So even in that, and I want to own that and acknowledge that, because I think that, as a therapist and as a cancer survivor advocate, you'd think that I would do all the right things. And I think it's really important for people to acknowledge their mistakes and to recognize that even people that know the right thing to do can still have a hard time doing that. And that's part of the process of learning and growing, and really looking in the mirror and say, yeah, that's on me. I did that.
And
I behaved that way.
Yeah, and look who you get to be when the next patient comes in and they said, I had X, Y, and Z going on. I knew I shouldn't have been doing this, and I was doing it anyway. And you get to look them in the eye and say, yeah, well, you're not alone. I'm right there with you. Christine, I don't advertise to anybody. Just about no one knows until now. Every one of you listening to this episode is now going to know as I out myself. After my second diagnosis and it metastasized to my liver, my doc cut out, the liver has two lobes, and he cut out part of one lobe, the part that has a gallbladder on it for whatever that matters. But he cut out part of one lobe, and then I recovered for like 5 or 6 days. And then I had to go stay. He wanted me to stay nearby, because for the first X number of days that follow, they just want to make sure that if anything happens that you're nearby. So I went across I had my surgery at Memorial Sloan Kettering. My doctor was Dr. D'Angelica, amazing guy. Michael D'Angelica, thank you so much, brother. You saved my life. And then Dr. Kemeny, my oncologist. And so I go across the bridge, and the guy who inspired me, who kicked my ass and got me to go and get my additional opinion, the third opinion at Memorial Sloan Kettering, because I was beaten down. I was done. My wife had left me. My wife left me in November. I lost my job in January, moved out of the house with her and the kids in May, and was diagnosed with stage 4 metastasis to my liver in September.
What year was that?
2010 to 2011. Yeah.
Dude, that's like, that parallels 2020. You know what? That is a shit year. How the hell did you survive?
I look back and
wow.
I ask myself, I just look, Yeah, it was crazy. I wonder what it was like for my friends, and I ask sometimes. I don't know how honest they want to be, but wow, that's one hell of a thing to talk about the people in your life, carrying the weight and being like, wow, when's Bert gonna get a break? I changed my Facebook name to Job. And yeah, people have had it worse than me, I know people have had it much worse than me, but that was damn hard. And so all the emotional pain, all the grief of not even really getting to grieve the end of my marriage, I, my doctor, D'Angelica, lets me go. My buddy Brad, he talked to his mom. She let me stay at her place. We both stayed there for like 5 days on the other side of the river just to make sure I recover. I think the day we got home, maybe the day that followed, there was a college football game on. The surgery was October 28th, I think. So I don't remember what game it was, but I think, Alabama, Crimson Tide is playing somebody. He and I made a bet, and I asked him to get me a beer. And I had a beer. It's like, dude, you just had your damn liver operated on. Is there a moron on the earth who's more of a moron than you? No, I actually get
Did
the prize.
they not put that on the discharge papers that you don't drink after you've had liver surgery?
I think I kind of figured that was a given. You can't be too bright if you're drinking like, a week after you just had liver surgery for a cancer, for a tumor in your liver. Yeah, this knucklehead, Bert Scholl, I had a beer. Now, anyone who can hear this might be judging the hell out of me. And you want to know what? I get it. Bert, you have a kid. What the hell is wrong with you? You have a family. What is wrong? I get it. For me, I was in so much pain. I was in so much emotional pain. When I moved out of the house with my wife and kids, I started drinking. And I was about 2 years out from treatment being over the last time. And I was drinking a lot of scotch. I was so pissed off. And I knew that what the scotch was doing was just turning it down. I was so angry. I was so fucking angry and in so much pain. And I was drinking. And I think anger and drinking probably didn't help the chances of me not getting a recurrence. Maybe it had nothing to do with it. I don't know. But I had a beer, and I don't know if the alcohol was just to turn off a little bit of the pain, or if it was just a defiant fuck you to the whole world.
I'm going to go with B.
You notice how that, the delivery on that one? Yeah. And I've not talked to people about it because it's not something I'm proud of, but life is hard. And sometimes we make decisions that are not in the best interest of ourselves and our loved ones. And I look back now, I'm like, what in the hell? Like, what did that beer do for you? Like why? Why? What?
Like, was that worth it? Like, is that, but that is where you were at that time.
Yep. And it was an expression of telling the world to go to hell. Like, this is
big ol'.
Yep. Big ol' F you. This is what I'm getting. Dude, you're crushing me. I got nothing left. Well, you got 7 months of chemo coming.
You're like, hang on, let me get some more scotch.
Yeah.
I get it.
Pardon me while I cut off my nose to spite my face.
Yeah.
It's real.
But again.
And I'm sitting here, I'm looking for more words. I'm trying to find a way to bring this around. There's no bringing it around. It wasn't a good call. It's what I did. And that's what's up. That's real. That's life being lived in reality. That's not, it goes as it goes,
Exactly.
And you said earlier, if you don't mind if I just get on a tear for a bit,
please.
When Rachel got diagnosed, you were like, excuse me? You're pissed because we have this ranking system that we somehow believe is real. We're totally engaged in it. just it totally, it's got the reins in our minds, like the reins on horses. On a horse, got the reins, and letting us know, like, oh no, I have a ranking system, and Rachel Hogenkamp is above the list, so
Yes,
no,
she's no, she's in the blue zone.
yes,
She's not down here with us purples. She's blue. So but
yeah,
there is no rank when it
exactly,
comes to cancer.
and
There's
who,
nothing.
right, and the people who get it are the people who get it, and that's just it, and we all make the choices that we make. And this whole, who's worthy of getting cancer and who's not, and we like to put cigarette smokers into that with lung cancer. Okay, well, then put me in there too, because I had a beer, 7
Yeah,
days after surgery.
you can throw me right in there too. I've done it
Yeah,
all.
yeah, essentially shaming people for life choices that they made. Life is hard. Life is hard. Like we are a world. There's so many parts of the world that uses a drug of some kind to pacify life, be it alcohol, coffee, cigarettes, uh, and then all the things that I don't know anything about, and marijuana, and then hard drugs. Why people do all this? Because life is hard, and we're just trying to numb it a little bit, make it a little bit easier.
And I think that people choose to numb it because they're afraid to talk about it, which brings us back to this conversation and having the real, the depths of the experience.
Mm-hmm.
It was when I was in the shallow, when I was in the shallow zone treading water prior to my breast cancer surgery. I just didn't want to go there. I didn't want to go to the deep end. I just tried to like kind of operate like everything was normal. Everything's fine. I just have this extra fucking marble in my boob. It's fine. It's fine. Gulp, gulp. It's fine. Gulp, gulp. It's fine.
Yep.
It was so far from fine. And, that big learning, huge learning for me. And, I schooled myself, but, friends and family and doctors also all like universally were like, yo, you're spinning out of control. You got some choices and you gotta choose, And so, I did like dial it on back. And I think, and the interesting thing my medical oncologist said to me, because my drinking dramatically slowed down after my surgery. And then also during my radiation, like it never returned to where it was prior to surgery. And she says she sees that a lot, even in people who aren't drinkers. Like I am a casual drinker, like even no matter what. But this out of control drinking, she said it's actually quite common. She sees it for people who have this type of thing where it's like, all right, you got this issue, but we're not going to do anything about it until next year. Hang in there. She said, this is very typical. And it really actually, it validated my experience and it made me feel a little less guilty about my emotional reaction and about my behavior, and that it was somewhat normalized that, yeah, you're living with this thing and a lot of people choose to deal with it in different ways. And so and then she was glad to hear that post surgery and radiation, it was like, no, because then I was doing something about it. I think there's you're going to the doctor every day for radiation treatments. You're seeing your people, you're fighting the cancer, they're cutting it out, they're examining you. But then when the treatment stops, that's also like, I remember at the end of the first one, it was like, well, now what?
Crickets.
And that's when the depression hit for me. I was fine through it. And then once everything stopped, then the gravity of the situation hit. And then I was like depressed. With this one, it was oh, you've got the thing, but you just hang on and wait. And that just didn't work for me. And then the doing, then I'm like, okay, do, good, you know? And so to be a year on the side has been,
Yeah, it sounds like the post-treatment thing we experience, and if you're not a survivor and you're listening to this, what's very common is for when treatment ends and you stop going in every day or every week, and you have 3 months before you have your next test, it's just crickets. You've been surrounded by people whose job it is to keep you alive and keep you emotionally well and physically well as you go through this treatment to save your life. And when it's done, you go home and it's crickets and you feel alone. Many people just feel alone and vacant, and there's a void, and there's just this hole that isn't being filled. And there's no transition. It's cold turkey.
that's just it.
And it sounds like you had that experience prior to your surgery.
Yeah, I didn't think of it like that, but that's that, you know, it's like has in talking about this, because this is my first, you know, podcast, and it is my first time talking about breast cancer, actually, with all the thousands of gigs I've done regarding my hooch. This is my first time actually like going and, you know, thinking about my process and how I dealt with it. And that is what it was like, because it was like horrible diagnosis, and then you meet your medical oncologist, your surgical oncologist, your radiation oncologist. You know, you have all these appointments right in the beginning, the mammogram and the PET scan and the biopsy, you know, all the things. So it's all chaotic for like the first couple, 3 weeks, month. But then it was 6 months of crickets, of like, okay, we'll catch you in 6 months. Like, just knowing that I had a tumor in my boob. The thing that I recognize, because as we're talking, like, it is so interesting because it's my first time thinking and processing the breast cancer thing. And it's like my period of that waiting period, that was my cricket period. And it's this place where it's like, you know, that you're doing this thing inside of yourself is happening, but there's nobody around you anymore. Like, so I'm trying to think of like how to say it. So like when we're all in it, we're going. It's like every day off to the doctor, every day I got someone by my side going, "What's up, Baze? Hey, you got this today. Let's do it." Boom, boom. And then you're done. And then it's like that silence, the crickets. And then you are only left with yourself and knowing that your body just attacked you. So you had to attack your body, and nobody else is there to help at that point, because you've been doing. And then you're just left with your body and your thoughts. And I think that's for most people after cancer. It's like, whoa, then what? Like, whoa. So with me, with this breast cancer, that initial diagnosis and all of the chaos that surrounds that, and surrounded it for me with meeting all these different oncologists, medical, surgical, radiation oncologists, having the PET scan and the tests and the hormone and the genetic testing and all that stuff. So like the first month was crazy. And it was like, okay, all these people, blah, blah, blah. But then they're like, okay, take this pill and we'll see you in 6 months. But the tumor was still in my boob. And I think that's why I lost it, because I had the knowledge of all this, but I was alone for 6 months instead of, and that's why, like, once then I was like, okay, I got to get ready for surgery. Now it was happening every day. Then I was fine. Then I wasn't drinking my face off. I wasn't drowning my fears and sorrows, because I was facing my fears, because I was actually doing something. And I think we're onto something here. That really makes so much sense to me now. I'm like, there's a reason why I lost my mind. And so when my oncologist, Dr. Mulvey, said, yeah, Baze, you're not the only one that, you know, we see a lot of this where people maladaptive behaviors during this like stall zone. It's like you're in limbo, just waiting. So of course, if you're going to lose your mind, I guess it makes sense because you got cancer, but you're not doing anything about it. I could just touch my tumor anytime I wanted to. It's like you want to fuck with your mind, play with your head. Oh, just here, touch my tumor. Want to feel a tumor? Like, no wonder I lost my mind. Even though I know better.
Well, who wants a therapist who's never messed up?
Yeah, definitely not me, because I really find that the flaws and the mistakes and the imperfections are what makes us unique and allow us the opportunity to like really hone our own individual beauty in the way that we shine through those things. These specific experiences, these are specific to me. And so it is my choice what I do with this information that I've gathered from this mistake and this scar, this experience. I actually wrote a song. It's called Scars to Stars. And my hysterectomy scar, I'm not going to flash anything, but I'm going to show you. So it goes from like here to here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, boom. And then I had tattoo of a star put there because I believe that, your scars are beautiful. And so what I ended up doing after I was diagnosed with breast cancer, before I went in, like in the early days, so this song is meaningful to me, and then I'm like, well, I'm going to put a star on every scar on my body. And so I did, because the lung surgery I have 3 different points of impact where they went in. And so I have a star in my armpit, on my back, and like right under here. For my laparoscopic surgery, they went in right here. So I got one here and one here. Mm-hmm. I had a scar from when I was in college and I cut my finger with a glass. So I did put one there too. But you know what I mean? So that the concept of something that was potentially ugly or devastating, or, a reminder of a pain or a hurt, to turn that around and make it a symbol and a sign of the beauty and the strength. And, it's like, yes, I got a star for that project. You know what I mean? Good job, Baze. You get a star. Boom. Yeah. And so I feel like I'm my own astrological constellation now. And it's unique because I'm the only one with it.
I was going to say that you are the Baze constellation now.
That's it. You can look up in the sky and try to find me.
It reminds me of kintsugi, which is where I think it's a Japanese process where a broken piece of pottery, let's say, is then fixed and filled in and then painted with gold paint. So
the gold fills in the cracks.
Yeah.
What is the name of it again?
I think it's kintsugi. I can look it up while we're talking. Oh, but I'm on. Okay, I'll look it up over here. Kintsugi.
That sounds. Yes, that's exactly. As you started to say it, I'm like, oh wait, I've heard of this before, and that's exactly it. Like you take the broken pieces and.
Japanese art of repairing broken pottery by mending the areas of breakage with lacquer, dusted or mixed with powdered gold, silver, or platinum.
You make it pretty. You make it broken beautiful.
And that's what's the most beautiful part, is the part that broke and healed.
It just made me think of when you were saying that dark year of 2010, and like your broken pieces from that year. Do you feel you've been adequately able to cement back, fill in the cracks as you've pieced yourself back together? Do you feel like you've got your shining luster?
I do. Thank you for asking. What happened is, after that, and I would say I completely fell apart or as my teacher, Ajashanti, says, my life fell together.
Mm.
In retrospect, I can say it became a journey of healing all the old wounds, digging up all the old buried issues, and working with them and through them. I've been in one relationship since 2010. I was intimate with different women, but only dated one person, and we're no longer dating. And so looking at that, one could say, well, that area is not full and shiny and complete. But like I said, in retrospect, I can see that there's been this process of unpacking everything from the past, not by choice. Like I go through a series of things just telling you how things just landed in my lap. Like, okay, this one's next. Okay, this one's next. Okay, this one's next.
You're like, okay, up to bat. Okay, up to bat this way.
Yeah.
Okay, I got a glove. Okay.
So I get.
Holy wow.
Yeah, and I love my life. I love, living a life from the choice of, how would I say this? When I was diagnosed the first time in 2007, a month after a month of my head spinning, myself crying and screaming and being terrified, it suddenly hit me that the diagnosis was a gift. And whether I live or die, this was a gift. And the first gift I saw was like, if I'm going to die, I'm going to live my ass off. And I'm going to be the real me, and I'm going to be the truly expressed me. And that's been, years of unpacking and freeing myself in so many ways. And when I was going through that, when that 10-month series of events happened that just took me out at the knees, I knew that I was going to come out on top. I didn't know how. I didn't know if I was going to live through it, but I knew that I was going to grow from it. I just refused to not be grateful for this life. And that's not a choice I made. It's just a part of myself I realized was just forever standing up and maybe knocked back down, but was always going to come back up. Like, I'm going to be grateful for this life because I have to, because I won't do it any other way. And I've gone to a therapist. I was at a therapist a couple of years ago, not feeling so grateful, being, going in this, I was in this dungeon in my mind I couldn't get out of. When I was 6 years old, about 3 minutes of my life, this guy sat down next to me and felt me up, sexually assaulted me. And when I was in my late 40s, 48, 49 years old, it all came up and said, I want to be addressed now.
It's time.
And that was huge. That I was working with a somatic sex educator and a therapist, and it was a huge amount of work. And when I realized that that sexual assault had the reins of my life for 43 years, because I was 49, happened when I was 6, I was sobbing uncontrollably. I was in a class with my teacher, Linda Ruth, an astrologer, and Rachel and some other folks. And when I really got that, like, this thing has been steering aspects of my life for my entire life, I just fell apart sobbing. And they all came around me and, were there with me. And in that moment, there was no gratitude. It was just like, what the hell kind of life is this? What, are you kidding me? And now I see that I can't look back at what I didn't do for the 46 years, 43 years. What I can do is recognize that I had this whole thing about, I didn't kick, bite, and scream. I told him no multiple times and finally got up and ran across and found my mom, ran across the house and found my mom. But I spent 46 years beating myself up for doing what I believed was freezing. And as a result of work with my therapist, what I realized was there's fight, flight, and freeze. I have it in my mind that I froze. And that's all that matters. So anytime I froze in my life, I hated myself. I was disgusted with myself. I'm like, that means I'm a coward. That means I'm weak. That means I'm not a man. That means I'm a pitiful human being. And now what I get is that sometimes I freeze. And sometimes I fight and I'm your fiercest advocate. There's not a person you'd want around other than me. But like when I fish with my kid, because we fish all the time, there's times he'll need me to do something and or I'll be trying to tell him what to do. And instead I'm just blurting out a bunch of words that make no sense. And I can't act or think properly because I kind of freeze. I just get stuck. So what I finally said to him one day after working with this therapist, I told him one day when we were fishing after I did it, like he wanted me to hand him the rod because we were on a charter fishing trip. And he's like, Papa, I said, yeah, it's your fish. So I wanted to give him the rod, but I was so panicked by this huge fish on the line that by the time I handed him the rod, the fish had snapped off. Now, who knows if it may have happened anyway, but my point to that is I looked at my kid and I said, hey, kiddo, so here's the thing. Sometimes your dad freezes. That's part of who I am. Sometimes I fight, and sometimes I run like hell. But this is part of who your father is. There's going to be times we're going to be fishing. I want you to know we're going to be fishing, and something's going to happen, and I'm going to speak to you, and it's going to be a bunch of gibberish and a bunch of nonsense, and I'm probably not going to respond to the things you say, and I'll get frustrated with you. So I told him that, and one time we were fishing, and I caught a nice trout, rainbow trout, and I wanted him to take a picture of it. So what I wanted to say was, will you back up around to the corner of the boat so I can walk through this skinny place and turn around and stand in the sun? Then you can take the photo. That would be the best way to do it. What I did instead was I looked at him and I said, what are you doing? And he just started laughing because he's like, Papa's in freeze mode right now. So Christine, like I now have freedom in my life to freeze. I get to accept and celebrate that who I am is exactly who I am because of everything that has happened and hasn't happened in my life. And I couldn't be the me that I love if I didn't go through what I went through. We don't wish that upon anybody. And of course I wish it didn't happen. But part of me is like, it happened. To wish it didn't happen would have me not be me. And when I got that, I freeze. And that's not something to be ashamed of. I said, oh my gosh, now I know what loving myself is. Loving myself is getting that there was never anything to fix.
You're not broken.
I'm not broken. I am exactly who I am, and I come exactly in the package I'm in, and I do what I do, and that's what makes me me. So, yes, that was the very long answer to your question. Like, yeah, I feel like it's where I've come since all of that. That really was when I had my marriage end and moved out and lost a job and got diagnosed again. That was really, it's like the universe said to me, okay, you got cancer the first time, so you could truly be yourself and live your life. And you did pretty good, but you're still like trying to put a cat into a cardboard box. And you got all four paws clawing into it and you won't. So let's see, let's try this. Let's see if this will get your attention. And it got my attention.
We'll give you a little bit of this.
And
that's really
yeah, shortly after that I started like meditating every day. My occasional practice became a regular practice. Meditation has transformed my life more than almost anything. It's phenomenal what it's provided, and all of who I have become is a result of losing most of what I thought mattered to me. And I got to start over and rebuild and become who I really want to be. So I'm doing great.
You're like, and that's why I'm doing great. Damn right you are. Dude, I mean, I ache for these conversations. Like I love really feeling like, I'm trying to find another word other than connected, but I just feel like, I don't know, I just feel like I just made like a very good friend, because, thank you for sharing with me, because that is a lot. And I can tell that you've gone through it. You didn't go around it. You went through it. You did the work. You know what I'm saying? You're not a poser. You fucking have done it. And that's inspiring. And it's, like motivational, because meditation is something that I continue to struggle with. I have yet to find that, but I add a yet to the end of my sentences, because I too hope to get there and experience that kind of peacefulness and awareness and evolution through it. And when you said that you went on the 7-day silent thing, just saying that right now, my belly got tight and my heart started racing a little bit. Just the thought of going on a 7-day no speaking, that must have been remarkable. And wow.
By day 2, I was like, what the hell kind of stupid idea did I come up with that this was going to be good? I was like, get me. I hate this. This is the worst decision I ever made in my life. By the end, I was like, please don't let this ever end. I want to say thank you for the acknowledgement.
Wow.
I really feel blessed that I'm a person who chooses to go through it and not around it. I don't know why I'm that kind of person, and I don't feel really responsible for it. All I know is like that's who I am, and I'm grateful for that. I feel pretty lucky. And as I tell you about my life experience, one could say, you don't sound so lucky to me, bro. But
exactly.
But I feel lucky, and yeah, like we can talk off the off thread. We can talk off camera, off mic about meditation. I'll share with you what I've learned or what got me interested. But yeah, listening to that teacher and having him explain to me the benefit of going and doing a silent retreat, that was my motivation to do it, because there's no way in hell I'd ever do that. Some kind of crazy nonsense like that. Go not talk to anybody. Go meditate for 7 days, not talk to anyone. I'm like, yeah, right, dude. Not a chance. And I've since done 2 with him, and I did 2 5-day semi-silent retreats with my other teacher, Amoda Ma. And I just love it now. Now I can't get enough of it. If I had my say, I'd be doing it a lot. But I'm going to acknowledge you and thank you for what you brought to this conversation. Like, just completely unveiled, just completely, you just bared yourself naked in front of everyone to give them the gift of knowing what this experience was like for you, the privilege of knowing what this experience was like for you, where you struggled, where you failed, where you succeeded, where you rocked it unbelievably. Holy cow, touring the country in a damn tour bus because you decided you're going to do that benefit show. I mean,
yeah, dude.
I feel like I don't feel like nothing. I know I just made a friend in you. And I'm so glad Rachel introduced us and got us on this podcast together. And I love you. And
I love you too. She was not wrong when she said, Baze, I think you're going to love him. And I'm like, I'm going to text her after this and be like, girlfriend, you are correct. And I look forward to meeting you when I go to Ithaca at some point, when we are beyond all of this madness of the quarantine and COVID. It's the appreciation. That's the other part of feeling this connected with my new friend, that one of the biggest, losses, I think, and challenges for most people is this, needing to disconnect physically from people, and how to remain feeling connected while staying physically distant. And you, my friend, have shown me how to break that barrier, because we just had the most intimate conversation and exchange. Like, my heart feels full, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like how I felt when I went to that to that cancer group. It was just like, oh my God, somebody gets it and understands. And it's like, I definitely feel like I've had like a wonderful therapeutic session with you. I don't know if I should send you a check in the mail, but
Your check is having devoted all your time to this podcast.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me, and seriously, thank you for creating this space. I have not listened yet. I wanted to go in without any ideas so I could just be blank, but now I have the ideas, so I'm going to go through, and this is a gift, what you're doing. And like you said earlier, that it's just, you're natural. It's easy for you. And it's very clear that this is like your gift to the world, to yourself and to others. So I thank you for letting me share in that. You rock.
You're welcome. I get it. I got it. I get it. Thank you. You're welcome. We have found so many ways to create disconnect with each other in this world. In 2020 in the United States, there's so many ways to disconnect and to separate and to feel against one another. And I'm way more committed to creating connection. And the more each one of us is willing to take off the mask, even for just a little bit. And I'm not talking about the COVID-19 mask. I'm talking about...
I know you're not.
the one we hide behind. I mean, you got to wear a mask sometimes out in the world, But when we can just take off our masks and just let ourselves be seen,
Damn, it feels good, doesn't it?
Emotionally naked with one another and not have to pretend. It's a real privilege, and I feel as lucky as you do that I get to be a part of this conversation. Yeah. So thank you again.
My survivor brother from another mother, you are. That's what you are.
And when my mom hears this, speaking of mom, if she hears that I had a beer after she's going to be pissed.
Oh.
She's going to kill me.
And Mama Baze is going to say to me, oh, yeah, I knew you were drinking too much before my surgeries. But here we are, being human and owning it and moving forward and taking the love. We give, we get, we give, we get, we give, we get. That's the circle, right?
That's the circle. All right. You have a beautiful day. Thanks so much.
You too. Thank you, my friend.
Bye-bye.
Later.
Thank you so much for tuning in. I truly hope this podcast was of value to you. Please subscribe and let your friends and family know they can find But Seriously, the Cancer Podcast, anywhere podcasts are made available. To learn more about my cancer survivorship coaching, please go to bertschol.com. That's BERTSCHOLL.com. If you'd like to support But Seriously, the Cancer Podcast, please go to our Patreon page at patreon.com. That's patreon.com/But Seriously, the Cancer Podcast. And thank you so much for all you do. See you all in the next episode, and thank you so much for listening. The intro and outro music you hear is the creation of Saint Kid. You can find him on social media as The Saint Kid. The purpose of this podcast is to provide a platform for individuals to discuss personal experiences with a medical diagnosis. The host and guests are not medical professionals, and the podcast is not intended to provide medical advice or psychological therapy. Whenever there is a concern about mental or physical health, please consult a qualified medical professional.